I just want to take a minute to talk about what it's like homeschooling preschoolers. All of my kids have passed that age now, and it's kind of sad and bittersweet sometimes. However, it is a tough age, so let's chat for a minute about that. Here are some of my favorite tips for homeschooling littles. First of all, don't try to do too much. It's okay. They have plenty of time to learn all the things. So just focus on simple things for them each day. Spend time reading to them. Allow them to have the freedom to play and be little, because it definitely goes by way too fast. Second of all, it's okay if you don't follow the schedule perfectly. When my kids were little, I never did it that way. And it's okay. They're all just fine. So don't stress over schedules and structure and routines when they're teeny tiny. Lastly, don't try to recreate school at home. It's okay to do it differently. Actually, we really thrive on doing it differently. That's kind of the point of homeschooling, right? So think outside the box, come up with different ideas. And lastly, know your child. If you've got one that is wild and crazy and just wants to run and be free, figure out how you can turn that into education. If you have one that's happy to sit and work in workbooks, great. Let them thrive in that. If they're not one way or the other though, that's also okay. Every child is different. I love that that's how God made them. Yes, it can be challenging when you have a lot of kids, but it's really great in homeschooling that we're able to adapt our schedule, adapt their learning. That really does fit them well. You're doing a great job, Mom. Keep it up.
The Bible is God's word.
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I just wanted to share my top tip with you for homeschooling preschool. Preschoolers are so fun and adorable. Sometimes they're wild and crazy. Sometimes they really need to stick to their schedule, and we all know what happens if we skip nap time. But I just encourage you to soak in this wild and crazy, adorable and sweet time. Soak in the way that your children will word things, the way that they pronounce things. Just like Mary, let it all just be stored up in your heart and help your heart feel full. These years are fleeting. They are just going to move by so quickly, and so my encouragement is to not miss it. Take the time to set aside the things you want to accomplish. And I know that it's hard, moms, because all we want to do is get something done. But at this stage, we see around us a lot of unfinished tasks. But I encourage you to make sure you're spending time with your kids, snuggling up, reading, spending the type of quality time with them that they need from you and that will fill your heart up. And I know people say it all the time, but the dishes can wait, the laundry can wait, but they're going to be growing up right before your eyes. So my encouragement is enjoy the season you're in and don't miss it.
Hello, my name is Narita Kendrick, and I am a homeschooling mom of 6 kids. I've homeschooled for 17 years. 2 of them are graduated and launched out, and 4 more are still here at home. And my biggest tips for the preschool years would be to read out loud to your children, read God's word, sing God's word, memorize God's word. Keep planting little seeds that you'll continue to nurture and water, and that will help forge a love for God, His creation, and for what really matters. And I would also say, get outside and enjoy and explore God's creation and let them stand in awe and enjoy playing in God's creation, pointing everything back to the Creator.
My top tip for homeschooling preschoolers is to keep it playful. Do as much as you can to play with your preschooler and to give them opportunities to play and explore on their own as well. Play with cars, play with balls, teach them how to play simple board games, learning colors through playing I Spy or things like that. We also have really enjoyed reading books out loud every day. I recommend reading books every single day to your preschooler. Those are memories that you're going to treasure, and it will help them to develop a love for learning as they get older as well. And I also recommend just keeping things at their pace when it comes to doing any type of school books. So we did Stepping Stones this year with my 3, almost 4-year-old. We've done stepping stones with a couple of my other kids as well. And there are days when my preschoolers have wanted to do all the pages and I'd have to stop them. And then there are days where they're like, I'm good. So just kind of go with what they're feeling, because they don't really have to do anything school related, and they will learn their best just by experiencing life around them and exploring the world around them, playing outside and getting to know other people as well. So just keep it play-based, keep it simple, keep it fun, and don't stress about schedules or anything like that. Keep a routine so that they know what to expect, and it'll help prevent those meltdowns if they're all of a sudden switching things up. But I wouldn't stress about any routine. Don't stress the mess that's going to happen. It'll get cleaned up over time, hopefully. And it'll be, just enjoy the time together with your preschooler, exploring and living life together.
Hey, how are you homeschooling your preschooler? At that age, do most of your learning through play. Outside time, hikes, nature walks, playing with Play-Doh, or any other sensory toys or manipulatives are going to be key for that age. You can teach them colors, numbers, and counting that way. One of my favorite resources for this age is Stepping Stones from Master Books. I use that to get my preschooler used to having a routine, but we do a lot of learning through play at that age. It is my top tip, and I think it has worked well for 3 of my children, and I have 2 more to go.
Hello and welcome to this session on preschool. What a precious age that we get to discuss today. My name is Caitlin Morris, and I'm one of the moms of Master Books and have the joy of being a part of the Master Books team. With me today, we have Carrie Bailey. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us all about the wonderful contributions that you've made to education and to Master Books?
Sure. I am a mom to 3 boys. I just graduated my first son. And I have written Stepping Stones, Simply K, Catch On to Cursive, and Handwriting A to Zoo. And then I also co-wrote with Angela Odell, Math Lessons for Living Education K.
Awesome. That is so many things that you've been able to be a part of, and you've blessed so many moms and families by your contributions. So we thank you and congratulations on graduating your first one. That has got to be a huge milestone for your family.
Yes, ma'am, it was. Yes.
Yeah. So when they were really little, from that time, it was probably hard to see the end, right? And now you're thinking like it went by.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Very true.
That's so important to help us moms who are still in those trenches remember that it goes by so quickly, and so not to miss those wonderful stages.
Absolutely. Yes. Enjoy every moment, because it passes by very quickly.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here to discuss everything preschool today. So let's go ahead and begin with a question on what developmental challenges do you feel preschoolers face?
So in order to answer that, I would like to kind of go through how they learn. So like preschoolers mostly, I think we all know this, they learn through play. That's like one of the major ways that they learn is through play. So like exploring things, learning through their senses, experimenting, developing skills like their language skills, their problem solving, and their creativity skills. All of those things are not fully developed. Pretty much from like birth to 2 and then 2 to 7 are like crucial times where they are building so many like neural pathways, neural connections in their brains. At age 5, so from birth to age 5 is when 90% of their brain is fully developed. That's a lot. So think about like everything, and like every second there is like billions of connections, billions of new connections that are actually forming for a preschooler. So it can also be overwhelming, which is why I think that we should not place an emphasis on what I would call academics. And by meaning that, I'm not saying that they aren't learning, because they're learning a ton. It's just not a true academic pencil paper type activity that you should be doing usually.
Yeah, that makes sense. What we often would put into the box of academics looks a certain way, but when you jump into the world of a preschooler and you start to understand the way that they learn, you can start to see, like, wow, by them doing Play-Doh or going on a walk or taking care of the dog today with mom or going to the store with mom today, they have taken in so much.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Basically, there's three main areas that are being developed during that time. And it sounds simple when I say there's three areas. It's really not. So obviously their brain is developing, and their their senses is developing, and then their relationships. And so those are the main three areas. And by each one of those, like for instance, that's why we like to say, well, they need a multisensory approach. That means that we're just helping develop their sensory system. And so by them seeing and feeling and touching, it's just building more pathways in their brain and basically helping them to weed out, okay, keep this, okay, we don't need this. And then the same thing with relationships. Relationships are crucial. I recently have had to go back into the public school system, and one of the things that has been a huge shock for me was like the stress that children are under, and the reaction and just their behavior based off of that stress. So again, it just reiterates everything that I believe in my core, that children need to play. You know, we have taken play away from them, and we just keep thinking, okay, I know I've heard people say they're mini adults, but not everything is fully developed yet. So we can't really say that. Yes, they are humans and should be treated as such and treated as a quality person, but to expect them to be able to maintain the attention and focus and do all these things that we expect adults to do, it's not reasonable. It's not healthy.
Right. They're still learning and observing us. And so sometimes us as moms and dads or teachers, educators, Sunday school teachers, we have to do some hard work ourselves to make sure that we are remaining emotionally healthy and modeling those good things to children. So where do you
Absolutely.
think the emotional health and education comes in for students?
Oh, that's from birth. Um, I mean, like okay, for instance, the back and forth interaction that even a baby does. Like a toddler will throw something. Like when they're sitting in their high chair, they're going to throw their spoon on the ground. You reach over and you pick it up and you give it back to them. You may tell them no. You may not say anything the first time. They're going to do it again. It's literally like this cause and effect little game, and that's literally what it is. But it's their brain taking in, oh, when I do this, hey, this is what happens. Well, wait, what if I do it again? Oh, this is what happens. You know, it's the way that their executive functioning is formed by those interactions with their family, with their friends, siblings. Parents obviously are huge, and that back and forth interaction is what helps them build their natural pathways and promotes learning. If you don't have social emotional, it's like the base. If you don't have that, then we really can't move forward. I saw a thing recently that said we have to have Maslow before we can bloom. And so that's Maslow's basic needs, basically. So if our students don't have the basic needs, my child doesn't have those basic needs met, then you can't go on to Bloom's hierarchy of learning. You can't expect them to move up that ladder if their basic needs are not being met. And social emotional skills are a basic need. They just are.
Absolutely. I've had the joy for many years of volunteering in the preschool area at our church. And we have some students who are very mild and they want to do the right thing and they line up and they do everything just so. They use their words really well. And then we have some that don't do those things and they like to run off and they like to They know that they're pushing the boundary, and they know that they're running around and turning off the light switch and all of those things. And while they are pushing those limits, I see beyond it. They are so smart. They're all so
Mhm.
smart. And sometimes the ones that push those boundaries end up one day becoming totally unlike their preschool self. Have you
Yeah.
seen this to come to fruition?
Yes, and I think part of it is exactly what you said. That is one thing I have observed in children everywhere is boundaries. I don't know if it came from the gentle parenting movement. I'm not sure where it came in. Um, and I'm not like a proponent of, like beat your child, he will not die or anything like that. I'm just saying like we have to teach them boundaries. Boundaries are healthy. And a lot of times, like, we don't want to use the words no, or, we consider that to be negative, when in reality, that's just setting up a boundary. Like, for me to tell a child, that's not safe. You cannot cross the road by yourself. That's not safe. That is not a negative term. That is letting them know, oh, wait, I want to be safe. They automatically, it's innate within us to want to be safe. And so when we say things like that, we give them a healthy boundary, that's setting them up for success later. And so by those children who are testing those boundaries, or maybe haven't been taught boundaries, I see a lot of that too. We have in our church as well the same types of things. Everybody everywhere does. They're not, our interactions nowadays are not what they used to be. Technology robs us. It has robbed our children of their childhood, and it has robbed us of our social interactions. Even in our families, it really has. And I, even myself, have been guilty and have noticed, in my own son, my youngest especially, I have had to take his devices because it's not that he was doing anything bad on them or, seeing something bad or whatever, but it literally affects this kid's behavior so much that it's scary. And I see it in other children as well. It's really scary because it's constantly getting their brain firing, 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 firing. And they never have time to stop and process, stop and problem solve, stop and think things through. And I know people would disagree with me, and that's okay. Um, I like using technology, it has its place. But it's just like the word of God says, everything in moderation. And I think that that's where we flipped it to where we don't have moderation anymore in that area.
Yeah, I would agree. And of course, this is not a judgment on anyone that likes to use a lot of technology or somebody that says absolutely no to technology. This is just a gentle discussion on some of the things that have been noticed in the development of our students. And
Mhm.
so when we see some students or some children at young little ages reaching for the phone or not being able to get through the grocery store without being on a device, what would you like to see in those students and what in those children, and what could parents begin to do? Because for us, isn't it easier to just get through the store without the fight, without the
Oh my
billions of
goodness.
questions? Can I get this? What's that? Sit down.
Mhm.
The whole thing. Isn't it easier? It just seems easier, but can you discuss a little bit about why we need to set those boundaries with technology and teach our children those hard lessons because it's a gift for them?
Yes. So one of the things, oh my, when you mentioned the grocery store, I remember those days of multiple, when my kids were really little and trying to take them into Walmart, and I hated it. It was like the most least favorite thing ever for me because I would have one crying, one, like one wanting something else. And it was like overstimulation. And we didn't even have like phones and devices weren't as big of a deal, I guess. Even think 10 years ago, that's how old my youngest is. And so we didn't do like hand them a device as much. But you are right. I mean, I see now there are some cases where like even in church, we do have some, like even in my own church, that they have a child with autism. And so that child may be on a device. Or, for instance, even this other young man that I know that has special needs, like he uses a device as a way to communicate. So they're like I was saying before, they're good in certain ways, but we have to use everything for our good and know when it's causing harm. You have to find that healthy balance. I do think there's a healthy balance, but our kids are struggling with social emotional because they haven't got to just play. They haven't learned turn taking. I mean, you can say, well, in a game, they're still taking turns. Sort of. It's really never stopping though. So they're not having to learn that patience of, I'm going to wait and sit here until this person is done. Then I get to go. And so, like, using the checkout, we have self checkouts everywhere nowadays. So I think those are great to, like, probably once your kid's like 4, maybe some 3-year olds, just depends, and maybe some 2-year olds, your child. So, like, if they can help you scan one thing, or, you're going and saying, okay, well, we have to pick out bananas. Let's look at the bananas and let's see which one is the color that we like, or, just things like that. I learned a long time ago with my oldest son, one of the best things I could do was the art of distraction. So if he's super upset about this item, then I would be like, oh, look at this, and like start making something, that might not be anything. I've done that with other kids who are having meltdowns because they're emotionally not regulated, which I don't expect them to be at a young age. But they have to learn, okay, wait a second. If I take my attention off of this for a second and put it over here, then our brain is curious. So it wants to know what's going on over here. And so it just helps to, like, shift gears and helps them to kind of learn to transition or be like, oh, I am okay. I can look at this now and be okay, to where, if I'm in a grocery store or in church, or even, like, for instance, I live out in the middle of nowhere. So driving for us is at least 20 minutes for anything. And so, a lot of times my son would think, well, I need this device. And I'm like, you do not need a device for a 20-minute car ride. And a lot of times we don't let our kids be bored anymore. They're so used to that fast pace, and our world is so fast paced. Even from when my oldest was a baby. I mean, the pace is just so quick. A lot of times as homeschoolers, we do get to escape that quick pace. And then sometimes we don't. Sometimes we also overcommit ourselves. And, that causes us to be going all the time. So it's finding the healthy balance. And for me, distraction, trying to get their focus on something else, even giving a hug. And I know that seems crazy, but I have had kids that were so upset, and to just acknowledge, you know what, I know that you are upset, and that's okay to be upset, but you can't be rude and disrespectful. And see, that is setting the healthy boundary of, it's okay to be upset. I mean, the Bible says, be angry and sin not. I've preached that to my children. I'm like, you can be angry, but you can't be disrespectful to your parents. You know what I mean? So, like, again, it's just setting up those boundaries where they learn, and it's not going to be a one-time thing. It's not going to be a one-time fix of me saying that, and oh, it magically happens every time. I would be shocked if that ever happened. You would have a very, very docile child or something for, just to have to say it one time. But all of those things play into helping them to thrive and helping them to know boundaries, and helping them to accept the word no. Because, I mean, then what happens when we get older and they're a teenager and they're told, no, you can't go somewhere. And then they're throwing a fit, or they leave the house anyways without permission, or they get a job later and their boss tells them no, and they don't think they have to listen. So boundaries can be healthy, and we need to teach our kids boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. We are placed there by God to lead our children, and it is loving to
Yes,
lead with boundaries. And we can show them that mom and dad obey God, and we're here to love God, to know Him, and a part of that is obedience to Him. So we must be
absolutely.
humble, and we must listen, and all of those helpful things. And I know connecting it in that way to those spiritual concepts can be a bit much for someone so young, but that is not a reason to shrink back from that truth. So I
Mhm.
love that Master Books has so many wonderful resources to begin speaking truth and God's word into the hearts and minds of kids. And so,
Absolutely.
what's your thought on? I know that you've authored Stepping Stones, and it covers a variety of Bible stories. And sometimes the child has to sit there for a little while and listen to the story. What do you think is the value of taking the time to do that, even though it may be a big ask for the child to sit, or they may not quite understand it? What do you think is the benefit of introducing these things at such an early level?
So, another thing that I am not a huge fan of, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but it's very difficult for a child that age to have to sit still for that long. So, one of the things that you can do, because even when children are doing something actively, a lot of times they're still listening. People think they can't do that, but I disagree. And I disagree because of my experience with kids. I've seen it, goodness, for 20 something years or more, of kids being able to, whether they're in a rocking chair moving, or if you want them to sit for 2 minutes, that's okay. I wouldn't do really more than 5 minutes at a time with a kid that young, just because that is asking everything within them to be able to sit still for that long. I do think it's beneficial for our kids to learn to sit by us in church. Um, and that being able to do that at home is going to set up. But I also took things for my kids, quiet things for them to be able to do while the sermon was going on. But you would be surprised, even my 10-year-old, he might be drawing in a notebook, but he knows what that preacher is saying. And he'll look up and ask you a question in the middle of his sermon, or think about a memory verse that he learned from Bible quizzing. Like Sunday, he's like, I learned that verse in Bible quizzing. And I was like, yes, you did. But things like that. And he's done that since he was like 6 years old, at least. And I remember, like, my other son, my middle one, he's now 14. And oh my goodness, he was like, loved the little sticker books, where you would put things on. But you would also think he's not listening, or maybe even like some Legos, building Legos quietly. Um, for him, you would think he's not listening. He knows every word that was said and would talk about it later. I mean, it might be 2 or 3 days later, and the kid is saying something, and you're like, well, I didn't even think you were paying attention. But so in that aspect, give them a wad of Play-Doh or some sensory putty or something, and let them be moving, because a lot of times when we are engaging a sense, we are still, like, all of our five senses are engaged all the time. So to think that we only need one of them, or maybe even just eyes and ears, without everything else, they're actually probably going to remember it more if you give them something like Play-Doh. So that's my in like take on that section, is pull out the highlights. If we're talking about a queen, or we're talking about Moses being in the basket, and let them make the basket with Play-Doh while you're reading them the story and talking about it. Just little things like that, so where they're more engaged, because we know the more interaction and the more engagement, the more they learn it. So there's that too.
Absolutely. So, those of you tuning in, Master Books does offer a program called Biblical Beginnings, which has a classroom model for families to take and adapt with stations. And it uses a variety of resources. And I encourage you to check that out. But since we have with us the author of Stepping Stones, we're going to focus a bit more on that curriculum today. So, would you tell us the heart behind Stepping Stones and the way that you chose to approach teaching for preschool?
Mm-hmm. So the main thing that we wanted to do, and it's based off of, again, those ways that children learn and how they make interactions, and how their brain is making all these connections. So I know I said earlier, like, it forms billions of new connections every second. That's a lot. And so what we want to do is basically foster growth foster a way for them to build a connection with things around them. So if we're learning about colors, then, we may have a yellow duck. We want it to be things that they're going to see in other areas, like in books or even, driving down the road or something like that. And that way, other toys, that way they're seeing it, they're making a connection with it. And that was the main thing for me, was for students to be able to make connections, because anytime we engage what we call background knowledge, which is those things that they've already kind of learned about, become familiar with, and I'm pulling from that background knowledge, that right there is quickly, like more quickly, building an extra pathway. And they're like, oh, I'm connecting it to this, so I know this. So it kind of already helps them to just build on the information that's already there, and then they can grow even further.
So Stepping Stones, it takes a very gentle approach to the preschool years. And if I believe right, aren't there 6 milestones for a student to learn as they go through and celebrate each one along the way?
Yes. And another thing with that, we wanted it to be like set kids up for success for later on. So if we're doing an activity in that where they might be like squirting water with a squirt bottle, that is setting them up for hand development, fine motor development. So like everything that's in there was used to try to set them up for success in the other master books courses. Like we didn't want to like overlap. There might be a little bit of overlap in some areas. And then like for our biblical portion, I focused on heroes of the Bible. I think it makes the Bible characters more relatable when we can understand. And some of them were people that, I wouldn't really have even thought of. It's not like your normal Bible toddler lesson. But anyway, so that was one of the things that we did in that course as well.
All right. So, Carrie, what if a mom really wants to begin a formal education with a 3 or 4-year-old, or she feels that she has an exceptionally gifted student? And we see this a lot. Oh, my 2-year-old, my 3-year-old is already reading CVC words. They're already writing. They're already doing this. Should I go ahead and start the first grade curriculum? Because that's where they're placing. How would you, from your experience, want to handle a situation like that, considering that don't all moms just want to do what's best for their kid, and maybe they're new at everything and they're just trying to figure things out? How would you handle helping a mom, guide her through that situation when you see a gifted child or a mom who wants to move along?
So I have raised these kids. They call them twice exceptional. They have ADHD, but they are also crazy intelligent. And I want to tell you, do not make the mistake I made with my first kid. I did go ahead and like, oh, he's so smart. Let's go on and do this. Let's go on and do this. I also had a student that I taught in the public school system where he was so smart that I was like, I think he needs to like skip a grade or maybe 2. And it wasn't because of his public education. It was because of his parents at home. But if we look at all of this, I went ahead and was like, oh, maybe he could even like skip a whole grade. The problem is we aren't looking at the whole child when we do that. Intelligence isn't everything. And a lot of times when we do go ahead and push the academics and skip a grade or do whatever, if you want to skip a grade, I personally would encourage you to wait until they're definitely out of 4th grade. I wouldn't skip a grade before that, because we know even through 12 and up, they're still learning. If you want, we can use the biblical account. Up until 12 years old, they were not they were still boys. They were not considered grown. They didn't take on more responsibilities until they were 12 years old. There's a reason for that. Same thing. That's when we first saw Jesus come out, and go in, and Mary's like, what are you doing? Why are you staying here? We got to go home, basically. And it's brain development. Okay. So like, if we think about there's different areas that our brain develops. It always develops sequentially. Okay, so we're going to take simple to complex every single time. Um, they thrive at the younger ages on that serve and return. So it's on the interaction of that back and forth that we talked about earlier. The action and then the response is basically what students are thriving on. Basically, it goes sensory motor, pre operational, concrete operational, and then formal operational. That formal operational is 12 and up. And so for like sensory motor, that's ages 0 to 2. So all they need to be doing during that time is developing their senses. They'll learn object permanence during that time. So you can, playing peekaboo, or like, here's an object, hide it behind my back, pull it back, which hand do you think it's in? Things like that. So they learn, oh, it's also that back and forth action, but it's also teaching them that it's still there, even though they can't see it. All of their reflexes. I don't have time to get into all of the reflexes in our body, but all of the reflexes in our body are being developed during that age of 0 to 2. Then we go into the pre-operational, and that is ages 2 to 7. So that's really where we're also talking about right now, to answer your question. So what do we want to focus on then? We want to focus on language development. One of the best ways to develop language is to read books. So if you want to do something, read to your kid. Everyone doesn't like that because they're like, well, that's not really doing anything. Yes, it is. You are building background knowledge. You are building all of those connections, language, vocabulary. It's all being built, cause and effect. Think about all the ways. Do you know there are college professors who have used children's books to teach their students because of what you can learn from a child's book? So don't knock it off and be like, oh, I'm just not going to just read to them. Please read to them. Abstract thought, that's also being developed. That's why, like for math lessons for living education, we even say, like on level 1, you get into that place value. I did it with Nathaniel, my middle one. I started him on math because he was pretty good at math. He still is. But when I got to the place value, he wasn't ready for it. It's very abstract. And so it was very hard to bring that in and make it more concrete for him. Not that Miss Angela doesn't do a great job, because she does a fabulous job. Their brain isn't ready for everything yet. It doesn't matter how intelligent they are. This is a kid who now wants to be like an aerospace engineer or something. I'm like, what in the world? But okay, go for it. They don't, even though they get abstract, they don't learn logic and like how to manipulate things though. Their imagination. So role playing, we've taken a lot of that away. I feel like homeschoolers do a better job than non-homeschoolers because we are at home and we, want our kids to like play with, play store, play cooking, play dress up, all of those things, using their imagination outside, creating forts, digging in the dirt, all of those things. They're going to learn more by doing than any other way. But you also have to keep in mind they are still very egocentric, which means they only see the world from their point of view. So they don't understand everything of like, when you're looking at this big picture, they don't get the big picture. They only see it from their little lens and what they know and what they see and experience. When we go on down the road and we get to 7 to 11-year-olds, that's your concrete operational. And the inductive reasoning comes in, hypothetical or abstract problem solving comes in. They'll start to notice like multiple objects at once and multiple properties at once. They'll be able to like sequence items more effectively, and that's when they also learn multi-step directions. So keep that in mind when you're giving your little ones instructions. They're not ready for 2-step directions. Some students may develop that. We all know this is like a guide. So please do not think, oh no, my kid is 7 and they can't do that yet. Okay, half the time my 14-year-old still can't. You know what I mean? So like, it's okay. Yes, there's things that happen at 14 too though. So, but you have to think about this as like a guide. It's not a hard true, like we want to say, oh, your child should be walking by the time they're a year old. Well, that's not true with everybody. Like I've got my nephew who started walking at 9 months, and my oldest son didn't walk till he was 14 months old. So, you know what I mean? Like we have to realize that this is a guide of brain development. We know that everyone develops at a different stage and rate. But by saying that, I want everyone to think about those things that we should be focusing on from 0 to 7. And I'll repeat them again. Sensory things, anything we can do with our senses, anything to help develop object permanence, because if you've heard me talk before, object permanence helps us with our letters, believe it or not. Any reflexes that we can come up with. That includes things like jumping, hopping, skipping, swinging, all of those things. Language development, abstract thinking, but not using logic to manipulate. Imagination, and knowing that everything is from their own point of view. That's how they see it.
So when you're at the store or you're somewhere and they have a big wave of emotions because they want that apple, and you said, "Oh, we have apples at home," and you have a huge fit as a result, many parents are quick to feel that maybe public embarrassment or I've got to make this stop quickly. What advice would you give to a parent to let them know what might be going on in the heart and mind of their preschooler?
They think about that sequencing. They like the back and forth. The only thing I could tell you is to, keep telling them, as soon as we get home, I need you to wait as soon as we get home. But I will also say this, when I see a parent that has a little one that's melting down, I would be overstepping, but I have this strong desire to just go ask them, do you need help? Because we are also, our society is like overly judgmental of a kid having a meltdown. We still kind of have that mindset of be seen and not heard. And that's why I think parents are like so embarrassed in the grocery store. I, again, would not give in to that, and just let them have the apple, but they're still learning those emotions. And when you get home and you give the apple, and you could even like take something out of your purse or bag or whatever and like hand it to them and say, I want you to hold this until I can get you an apple. Something like that, just so they're like, oh, okay, I have something tangible in my hands that I can see, I can feel, I can touch it. The apple will come. And then making sure that you let them hold that until they get the apple, and you give them the apple. And this, just doing that will help them to develop that understanding of, oh, this is coming, here it is now. Another way to do that is to practice it at home. Say, oh, I need you to wait 5 minutes, hold this towel so mommy will remember that I am going to give you some cereal or whatever it is. Just little bitty things like that. And I honestly would only do like 1 minute. It's kind of like that story, that scenario where you put the candy in front of them and like you can either have it now or you can have it later. Well, the younger they are, they're just going to choose it now, because later is like, well, when is later? It's abstract. We don't know. So by handing them something that they can hold, it could even be like if you have something cold in your cart, cold, even something that's warm, something that's got a sensory to it. If it's another fruit or something like that, that they can touch and feel. Things like that, especially cold things, are also like, it's giving them such strong sensory input that they're also going to forget about that apple. Now they also might take something and throw it in the floor. And if they do, just pick it up and I would just keep on going. Just roll your cart and keep on going. Something will distract them.
That's so true. It's such a challenging season because sometimes it does feel like all eyes are on you, and you do just have to, sort of grin and bear it and get through it. But just remember, what your goals are with this child. God's given you this child, and he's fearfully and wonderfully made. And you are doing your very best, and you don't have to seek the approval of the world, and your tactics that you're doing may not look like the rest of the world, but that's okay. And so, moms who are raising preschoolers, just stay faithful because, like we started off, the season does go by so quickly and it is exhausting. And I do understand that that is why that temptation is there to replace what mom and dad can give or grandma and grandpa can give relationally. It's easy to want to replace that with a quick short-term fix, but I saw somewhere that there's no app that can replace your lap. So I know it's
Right.
draining, I know it's long, and the hours are long, the days are long, and the messes are big and many, but try to find the joy in it and try to remember that God loves your child and he's with you too as you seek to raise them and help lead them through as you lead and love them through the preschool years. And
Mhm.
you will get through it, and then you'll look back and say, "Oh, that was so great." But when
Yes.
you're in the thick, it's really challenging sometimes. And so we need those moms who are further on to go ahead in the store and say, "Hey, mama, you're doing a really great job." Or, "Oh, I
Yep.
just love that outfit you picked out for them."
Mhm.
Anything like that can just be the biggest boost. So I encourage
Absolutely.
moms to encourage one another, whether that's in your own communities or circles, in public if you feel it would be okay, because moms do need that encouragement and it could just be the thing to help them that day.
Mhm. You're right. You're right.
So, as we finish out our session today, let's end on talking about moms who are homeschooling multiples and maybe they have a couple young ones in the mix. How can they get their preschooler involved to help maybe bring a diaper? Or what would it look like if mom really needs to focus on elementary and older? How can you
Mhm.
help her, encourage her to not feel too guilty about not doing a ton at this point with those younger ones?
Well, first of all, remember where they are. So I also, even with my own boys, they all have the same genes, but they're all three very unique. Their personality is unique, even though my oldest and my youngest, I say, are like two peas in a pod. However, they still have differences. And so I don't parent my oldest the same way I do my middle child. I don't have to do the exact same thing. And it's just like that with schooling and the stage that they are in. So know the stage that your child is in, accept it, and know it's okay that they're over there playing. Independent play is not a bad thing. It helps them to like be able to self-regulate. It helps them to become a little bit independent. Believe it or not, they're still learning. They don't always have to have you right there for them to be learning. And if there's a way, one of the things I would do too is like, for instance, if my oldest was like into something that he really needed mom's help and the other one is being distracted, then I might have, my other child go and kind of entertain for a little bit. Another thing I would try to do was, if I couldn't get the little one like distracted with something, let them sit in your lap, let them have a snack. That's another thing I did was put them in the high chair with a snack right next to us at the table with us. All of those things are helping them because they're still being a part of the family. They are still interacting. It may look different, and obviously it will, but you're not neglecting that child. You're not neglecting their time. We are just encouraging them to be in the stage that they are in and not trying to push them along too much and too quickly.
Yeah, they do interrupt pretty well. It's like a little superpower that they have. I mean, I would finally get down to a lesson with one of my older kids, and here comes running through a child hardly wearing any clothes, and they're unrolling a whole thing of toilet paper. And it was during that year where toilet paper was hard to come by, you know. And
Oh,
so it was like, oh, just crazy town is how it felt. And I just began to wonder as a homeschool mom, like, are we accomplishing anything? And so, moms, you are.
yeah.
Even if those moments you may not accomplish learning the lesson in the curriculum for that day, just stop and have the joy and the laughter that we're together. And sometimes those simple things are really wonderful. And so to find the joy in your children and in the season that you're in, it may not be
Absolutely.
pretty, it might be a bit messy, but that doesn't make it negative. It's actually beautiful and wonderful. And so, what advice, Carrie, would you want to give to a mom who's nervous right now? She's maybe got a 4-year old, maybe another little one, and maybe a baby, and she's considering homeschooling. What advice would you want to share with that mom today?
Take it one step at a time, one moment at a time, not even a full day at a time. It's not going to hurt your 4-year-old if they get their lesson interrupted. It's not going to hurt if you only get 5 minutes in, as long as you are interacting with them and guiding them. Read. They'll all love reading, even if you have to put on an audiobook while you're making dinner and call it good. That's okay. A lot of times we put so much emphasis on the way education should look. That's not the way that education is when we live it out. So let go of those mindsets of, oh, but it should be like this and it should be like this. Find your own groove, find your own routine and your own rhythm. It will change every year. It will change maybe every day, and that's okay. Be flexible. Meet your kids where they are. Think about their development. If they're having a rough day and you just need to go to the park instead, do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage moms of preschoolers that I've seen a lot in our group in the Master Books app for preschool and early elementary that a lot of moms enjoy getting very special items and sensory items or a sensory bin or things that only come out during school time or only come out when mom is needing to make dinner or something like that. And so that can train the kids to look forward to that activity and know that it's a special time as opposed to things that are available all the time.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a really good idea.
Yeah,
And
those
letting them help you. Like it doesn't have to be that they're helping you cook. You know what I mean? Like they're just along for the ride, basically. Like you might hand them a spoon or something and say, oh, can you put this over there? Very simple task, even when you're doing your laundry or, whatever it is, they learn from all of those things. Think about it. I mean, even if they're helping you put the silverware away, that's still sorting. It's still a math, activity that they are doing. Whether or not we look at it as that, sometimes we look at it as, oh, great, now I've got to empty the dishwasher again. Um, you know, they love doing things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's hard to manage our own desires of how we do live in this fast-paced world of I want to be as productive as I can, get as much
Mhm.
done as I can, and as fast as I can, because that makes me somebody. But I know moms, I'm speaking as a mom who is no longer in the preschool age, and so I am wearing my rose-colored glasses. But I do speak out of a place of mistakes that I made in that season, and I was in a hurry, and I don't think I placed value where I should have at times. And when I look back, we had a lot of great, wonderful times in that season. But of course, now, if I could go back, I would slow down more and try to get
Yeah.
less done. Our meals would have been more simple. Our house would have been a little bit more messy than it already was, but I think we would have all had more peace and felt the joy a little bit more than trying to meet mom's expectations. And I know that that's
Absolutely.
really hard, but God is with you and He is faithfully walking with you each day as you lead and guide and hold or even help clean those sweet, chubby little hands. Just don't miss it. I think that's what Carrie and I are saying today overtly. We can talk about the brain science and the way that the curriculum is designed to be used. But I think more than anything, our hearts today are saying, just love your little ones and enjoy watching them learn because that's what they're designed to do.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for being with us today, Carrie. It's just been a joy to discuss these topics with you and hear from your heart and all of your education. And we thank you so much for all of your contributions to the world of education and with Master Books.
Thank you so much for having me.